B1 family, welcome to Blacklogic. So I don't know if you guys are aware that Donald Trump did almost a 3-hour interview with Joe Rogan. They talked about UFOs, JFK files. I believe I even heard Martin Luther King was mentioned. There was a lot of things that was covered in a 3-hour interview. And again, I'm no MAGA, I'm no Republican, I'm no Trump thumper, but I will say that this is one of the first times that I've seen Donald Trump as a human being. He was not as unhinged as he usually is. He wasn't as animated as he usually is. It was really a decent interview and discussion. Now, my take on would I agree or disagree with certain things that were said, that's neither here nor there, but I will say it was the first time that I've seen Donald Trump as a regular human being. It was it really took me back a little bit. It was very shocking. And then today, I know you guys all aware the interview that Kamala Harris had with Shannon Sharpe. Now, this was piggybacking off what Donald Trump did with Joe Rogan. She had to go out and get someone who, of course, agrees with her views, policies, and they got Shannon Sharpe. And Shannon Sharpe is just trying to grow his platform. This is, one of the hugest iconic figures other than Cat Williams that he could essentially have on his podcast. I don't know if he would do better than Cat Williams. I believe Cat Williams is probably more popular, more liked, or more interesting than Kamala Harris. But nonetheless, this is huge for Shannon Sharpe. So I'm not throwing any shade there. And of course, he was also advertising Call of Duty Black Ops 6. So all of these things are great when it comes to the business acumen of Shannon Sharpe. I will give him his flowers on that. But other than that, seems as though he's siding with the Democratic Party, not because of the interview with Kamala Harris, but you need to go and watch the interview to see how some of the questions were tailored, see how he was being very easy. And again, it was an interview, not a debate. But again, I think some of the hard questions were not asked in a manner to challenge and or get a substance answer from her. But I digress. I just want to listen to a little bit of some of these interviews, family. We won't listen to them in entirety. But I want you to first off hear this one between Joe Rogan and Donald Trump about him being targeted by the media.
It's funny. You need at least the attitude of a comedian when you're doing this business. This is a very dangerous business. First of all, it's a very tough business.
It's the most dangerous business.
For a job?
Yes. I mean, other than going to war and being a firefighter or being a cop, it's the most dangerous business.
It's the most dangerous. Being president is the most dangerous.
Especially you. I mean, you haven't even got to the election. There's been 2 assassination attempts, and they've brushed those out of the news like it was nothing.
Yeah, they'd rather not talk about them.
Imagine if there was assassination attempts on Biden, how hard people would be attacking the right, how they would be trying to get guns taken away from people. They would try to ramp up gun laws. They would try to figure out some way to blame you. If there was attacks if Biden got shot in the ear, we would have never heard the end of it.
But I think he's in good shape because it's only consequential presidents. If you take a look at what's happened, look, I'm for having countries pay us billions and billions and trillions even dollars. I took in hundreds of billions of dollars from China. Nobody took in 10 cents, not one other president. I do things that make it, that don't necessarily make me so popular. I just do what's right. And when you do that, you're more, look at Iran. We would have never had the attack on Israel at all. Iran was broke. I told China, if you buy, you can't do business in the United States under any circumstance. We're going to go cold turkey with China. Some people think that would have been a good idea anyway. But if you buy any oil, 1 barrel of oil from them, you're not doing business. And I said that to many countries. Iran was broke. They had no money for Hezbollah. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money. But I make myself, I understand what I'm doing. You make yourself a target. And it's a very dangerous business. But
Now, if you guys had to choose what candidate you was going to vote for, now let's take out some of Trump's past, Central Park 5, housing discrimination, sexual assault allegations. Let's take that all out of the window. Let's even take away some of the abrasive things that Trump has said that really got people worried if he were to be a dictator or try to rewrite, reconstruct the Constitution so he can stay in office longer. Let's take all of that out because I don't believe that will happen, not in this country, maybe in other countries, but that will not happen where we have a dictator. The Constitution is way too strong, and we have three levels of government that will prevent that. So with that being said, do the same thing for Kamala Harris. No matter if she's black, white, or Indian, take that away. Take away her truancy laws that locked up a lot of black women as well as Hispanic women in California. Take that away. Take away the fact that she locked up a lot of black men for nonviolent offenses, mostly for marijuana, the same thing that she laughed about. Take away all of the things that were allegedly acclaimed to these people. And I want you guys, if you can, without all the emotions and rhetoric, focus on their policies. That is what I want you to do. Now, the first one here, Donald Trump on Rogan's podcast, Trump focused mostly heavily on his past presidency and his plans if reelected. He doubled down on his familiar themes like limiting immigration, revitalizing manufacturing jobs, and prioritizing America first. Now, if you're an American, especially like myself, a foundational Black American where your family stems here for hundreds and thousands of years, then of course, this is attractive. This is something that you're going to lean into, that I would think, because Joe Rogan provided a relaxed yet provocative setting where Trump reiterated his stance on dismantling governmental regulations and pushing back against social movements he claims that have destabilized the economy and culture. Now, he does have a point only because we're living in somewhat of a destabilized economy where, inflation is high, food prices are high, gas is fluctuating. Right now, gas is actually doing pretty well, at least in Texas it is. But again, we've had gas in Texas up to like $3.30, which is pretty high for Texas. I think right now the range is between kind of like $2.30 to $2.70 from what I've seen. But even the net, we're somewhat in a destabilized economy. Now, while both of these, Donald Trump and Joe Rogan, discuss immigration and trade, in my opinion, the conversation lacked depth on racial equity and reparations, two critical areas for us. So that's why I'm stating that a lot of these things, if you already know that you're going to vote, and you already know that neither candidate is going to do anything for Black Americans, then you're still going to vote. These are some of the things that you have to take into mind, because Trump emphasized an aggressive anti-immigration policy, which I agree with. I'm just letting the cat out of the bag right now, which I agree with, suggesting that limiting illegal immigration would benefit American workers. Now, however, his previous administration saw the rollback of what people would like to believe civil rights protections and programs that predominantly supported Black communities, which, as I dug in some of the legislation, I didn't find any of the sort. But these are the claims of people who are on the left, mostly the Democrats. And his emphasis on policing reform involved expanding law and order policies, which is absolutely true. He's talking about airtight qualified immunity. Now, I fact-checked that. He did state that. So many people who associate themselves with policing, that of course we need police officers. Of course we need good police officers, but there is an association with over-policing of Black neighborhoods, leading to higher incarceration rates, although he promoted economic recovery through lower taxes. Now, some people may argue that his policies disproportionately benefit corporations and the wealthy. He believes that if you implement large tax cuts for the wealthy, for these, Fortune 500 companies, that the wealth will trickle down to the middle class and lower class because they will provide jobs, opportunity, signing bonuses. I don't know if you guys have been in the job market lately, but there are not a lot of businesses are not giving sign-on bonuses, as well as they're decreasing the amount of yearly bonuses that people receive as well. That's because the economy is at a low right now. So these are some of the things that when you're thinking about both candidates that you should take into mind. That's my take on that. But let's listen to a little bit more of this, how the media has been targeting Donald Trump. And to a certain degree, I believe they have.
If you just look at statistically, so I said, I sort of think, I don't know if it's right, but 0.1% for a race car driver. Yeah, it's a pretty dangerous business, right?
Yeah.
0.1% for a bull rider. I tell you, to me,
You're talking death.
These guys that ride the bulls is worse than UFC. It's worse.
Yeah.
These guys, you see these big monster bulls, and you see it in slow motion where the foot is like, you know, an inch away from the head. If it hits them, the guy's gone. But they die. You know, they die.
So 0.1% die. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, 0.1% die.
Right.
And they certainly get hurt badly. Or really, I mean, they can't walk after a certain period of time. But with a president, if you look at
the amount of assassination attempts.
And attempts, too.
Yeah.
And attempts. No, it's a very dangerous position. I never thought of that, by the way, when I did it. You don't tend to think.
Did you just assume because people loved you on The Apprentice, they were going to love you as a president?
I figured it would be so easy. You know, it's
well,
very
it probably
interesting.
would have been if the media didn't attack you the way they did. If they didn't conflate you with Hitler. I mean, even today, like Kamala was talking about you and Hitler. They're going to take what you said about Robert E. Lee. Oh, Donald Trump wishes the South won.
That's right. He loves Robert E. Lee.
They love to take things out of context and distort things. But
well, they don't even have to take them out. They make them up entirely. Okay,
they do
make
that
them.
too.
But you know, it's interesting when you mentioned I was very popular, and all those people loved me. I mean, some of these women, they're so stupid, and Joy, she would every time she'd see me, I'd be in the theater or something, and she'd, you have to be on the show again. Come on, let's go.
She loved you.
She loved me.
That episode where
people go on CNN and they call and said, I don't know what to do. They want to pay me a lot, but I have to be negative on you. I said, be negative. That's okay. There are guys on like CNN, they won't hire them. Sean Duffy is a congressman, and he retired. He got a good job with CNN, but he was only positive about Trump. So they kept him, but they would never put him on. I mean, I respect what he did. He could have gone,
Now, I want to just take a small little gauge here of who thinks that the media has been unfair to Donald Trump. Who believes that the media has been misrepresenting Donald Trump in a negative light? A lot of the fear smearing campaigns, a lot of the things there has been fact checked to a point where the media has lied on Donald Trump quite some time. When we saw the debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, the one thing, and I was on no one side. I'm not on a Republican, Democrat, Harris or Trump side. But the one thing I did notice is that they fact-checked Donald Trump, if I can recall, about 5 to 6 times, okay? They never, and I'm not even exaggerating, family, they never fact-checked Kamala Harris. Then, of course, some people are like, well, she never lied. She lied a lot. I call both of these, as a matter of fact, I call all politicians lieticians. Okay? They do some truth and they do a lot of lies. And a lot of the regular people like ourselves, we get confused, discombobulated. This news agency is stating this news agency is stating that. Now, shout out goes out to Joe Rogan as well as Shannon Sharpe for doing some wonderful interviews. Fair use. This information and video clips is being used with the Fair Use Act for commentary. But nonetheless, I'm just going to jump right in to Kamala Harris. Okay, I'm going to set the premise here, family, because in her interview with Shannon Sharpe, Kamala positioned herself as a champion of social justice and equity. And doing so, she highlighted her administration work on the infrastructure, on education funding and healthcare expansion. I think she even mentioned the what was the medication they decreased the price down to? I think it was insulin, decreasing the price of insulin to $35. That was a good thing. That was actually a good thing. However, when asked about more specific issues, open border policies, how that may affect American people, especially Black Americans, because a lot of these illegal immigrants are being flown, driven, dropped off, parachuted in to Black communities. Her responses were notably vague, as they always are. She emphasized the importance of coalition building and inclusivity, but she avoided to the direct legislation and the targeting of limiting the pathway of illegal immigrants to citizenship. If you hear what I'm saying, family, I'm not saying limiting the pathway to legal immigrants to citizenship. We're talking about illegal immigrants, and I think that is where a lot of people get tongue-tied. Look at that. But nonetheless, they also brought up Project 2025. And again, I'm believe me, family, I'm very neutral. I'm very apolitical on this. At no time did Donald Trump ever affiliate himself with Project 2025, but the Democrats have continued to label and attach that. Okay, I get it. It's political theater. It's smearing his image. However, they're trying to win this presidency. That is what they're doing, just as well as the Republicans. Okay, but you need to go on his website. He has all these video clips about Agenda 47, and in my opinion, there are some elements of Project 2025, but it's not exact. Okay, they're not as strong. They're not as blatant as Project 2025. So I will not associate Donald Trump with Project 2025, but yet I'll associate what he actually produced, which is Agenda 47, okay? Because during this interview, Kamala Harris defended her administration's immigration policies, in my opinion, the lack thereof immigration policies, in framing her policies as humane and inclusive. If that is allowing every Tom, Dick, Harry, Tyrone, Pookie, and Ray Ray in the country, then they did, okay? Because though this has drawn much criticism, especially from the Foundation Black American Family, who knows that our resources are being diverted from communities in need, okay? And when I'm saying diverted, we are strongly working on getting these resources, and then they have the excuse, well, we have people who are coming across the border who's less fortunate, so we have to, this school that we were thinking about rebuilding, even though you guys have been protesting, marching, you guys have been going to town halls, you've been meeting with your aldermen, meeting with your councilmen about getting funding and resources to reopen the school because the adjacent school is overcrowded. We're going to renovate this school to allow illegal immigrants to live here in your neighborhoods illegally. That is what we get. And then on economic policy, she discussed investment in green energy, jobs, and healthcare. But like Trump, offered very few specifics on combating the racial wealth gap or increasing home ownership, especially among our families. Now, before I go any further in my commentary, I want to jump right in. I think in the beginning here, give me 1 second. I thought I had this queued up. My apologies.
African-American, Asian-American descent. She's been district attorney of San Francisco. She was the nation's first Indian-American senator. She's the first woman, first Black Asian-American to be elected vice president. She set the record for the most tie-breaking votes cast by a vice president. She's the first Black woman, Asian-American in U.S. history to win the presidential nomination of a major party. She's the first HBCU grad, making us proud. She's a Howard University alum. She's a member of the prestigious Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. Here she is in person, Madam VP, Kamala Harris. Madam VP, how you doing?
Thank you very well, Shannon. How you doing?
It is an extreme honor, privilege, and a pleasure to have you on Club Shay Shay. CJ, who's the producer here, when we started this journey, Madam VP, 4 years ago, celebrity.
That moment, I knew what it would mean, but not in the detail of it, but I certainly understood the seriousness and the gravity of the moment. And actually, one of the first people I called was my pastor.
Wow. Okay.
I knew I needed a moment to just be still and for my spirit and my mind to have clarity about the seriousness of the moment and my role. And I'll never forget that call.
Now, just for some spark, does anybody want me to rewind the video so you can hear the famous Kamala Harris laugh? Is anybody interested in her laugh? Or is it as annoying? Because she did early on, she did a lot of laughing here. She did a lot of laughing, but nonetheless, I digress.
Single time. So I'll talk with elected leaders who are supportive about, so for example, here in Atlanta, what do we need to do to make sure that we're giving folks the resources to knock on doors and remind folks of the power of their voice? And 12 days in, it really is a lot about trying to focus on getting folks to know their power, to not let anybody suppress or silence their voice, and to vote.
Right. So breakfast, what does Madam VP eat for breakfast, or do you have time to, or is it on the go?
No, when I was younger, I didn't think I needed breakfast. I wasn't a breakfast eater.
Okay.
Now I have breakfast every morning. It's usually a spinach omelet. It's not very exciting.
Right.
But
I'm sorry, family. I had to do it. I know you guys wanted to hear her laugh. Lord. Oh, gosh. Okay. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of it all. Let's get into the meat and potatoes. Here we go.
That, people, disabilities, retirement, survivors with beneficiaries. What are you going to do to make sure that that continues?
So, Shannon, to your point, there was an independent economic review of Donald Trump's plan, which shows that Social Security in the next 6 years would be insolvent under his plan, meaning that it would not be able to pay out what hardworking people who deserve.
Now, I don't mean to keep stopping it, but Lewis Knowles made a good point. What I've noticed from Kamala Harris, and this is not bashing her in any sort of way, family. Again, I'm apolitical on both of these candidates, but nonetheless, she says a lot of things that doesn't make any sense. And if you heard it earlier, as Lewis stated, give people the resources to knock on doors. Well, I know Donald Trump made those golden high top sneakers. Maybe she's in partnership with him. I digress.
Dignity in their retirement deserve. And as you and I both know, there are a lot of our seniors who their only source of income is that Social Security check.
That's correct.
Right? It's the only way they're going to pay the rent or have food on the table. So my plan is about doing what we need to do to put the resources back into Social Security, but also expanding it. Because here's part of the problem with Social Security is that for our aging seniors, if they are a couple, for example, and one of the spouses passes, that cuts their Social Security benefits almost in half. So part of my plan is to reconfigure it so that that surviving spouse does not then have a crisis where they've already lost their loved one. But we also just have to understand on a macro level, we've got to require that billionaires and corporations pay their fair share, right? They can afford to. And that's part of what is the difference between me and Donald Trump. That you and I will benefit from that young family having the resources they need. So it's about all of us benefiting, but it's a state of mind and it's a perspective. Mine is about thinking about the challenges people face and getting them help. Donald Trump is full-time focused on himself. You watch his rallies. He will spend full-time talking about I was going to say Freddy Krueger, Hannibal Lecter. It might as well be Freddy Krueger. Hannibal Lecter. He'll spend full time talking about his grievances, about what everyone has done to him. He'll talk about himself, but he does not talk about the American people. He does not talk about what he's going to do for middle class. He does not talk about what he's going to do for families, for working people. And we're 12 days out.
Quick question for you all. Did anyone see the Joe Rogan and Donald Trump interview? Now, I would definitely say in the 3 hours that Donald Trump interviewed with Joe Rogan, I can't really recall a definite timestamp. Kamala Harris did come up a couple of times because, of course, it got down to politics. But In no way, shape, or form do I recall the constant bashing that Donald Trump did to Kamala Harris. He said a couple of things. Don't get me wrong. Again, I'm not taking sides. But this was only an hour interview, and I would say probably about half of it was bashing Donald Trump. I just want to point that out. If you guys didn't see the 3-hour interview with Joe Rogan and Donald Trump, very, very stark differences here, family.
This is probably one of the most serious elections that we have faced in our lifetime. My perspective, and I will be the kind of president who spends full time focused on the needs of the people. That has been my career. I have spent my whole career as a public servant trying to uplift the condition of other people, knowing what is possible and doing it with a sense of optimism. On January 20th, a new president is going into the White House. Mm-hmm. Period. A new president is going into the White House. Do you want to look at the Oval Office and see a Donald Trump who's going to be sitting there filling out his enemies list, spending full time figuring out retribution and revenge, or looking at the Oval Office and knowing you have a president in there who's creating a to-do list that's about what to do to help the American people?
So raising minimum age of Social Security, that's not on the table for you.
No. Look, people work hard all their lives and they deserve to be. So my plan is Medicare pays for home health care. Okay. And no, I would not raise the age of eligibility for Social Security because the same thing. We shouldn't force people to work until they're 70 in order to retire and have a moment to just enjoy their life and not worry about how they're going to pay their rent.
Is Medicare for all a priority for you?
What is a priority for me is making sure that access.
Now, I want to make sure you guys heard the question. Is Medicare for all a priority for you? She said no. Okay. So both candidates. And here's another thing I want to point out as well. Where both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris align and they diverge, so to speak, because both Trump and Harris discuss immigration, though from starkly different perspectives. Trump's stance is hardline, advocating for strict border control to protect American people, to protect the American economy, to protect American jobs, while Harris' policies favor inclusivity and compassion for immigrants. And of course, we've seen this over the 3.5, 9, 10, 11 months that her and Joe Biden has been in office, where she's the border czar and allowed hundreds, if not hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants inside the country with the catch and release policies. Okay. However, neither address the nuanced impact that immigration has had on foundational Black Americans without economy, without infrastructure in our communities. They have left that out, leaving a gap in their discourse that matters deeply to the demographics. Now, granted, illegal immigration is affecting us all, but again, we have to point to the stark differences in what communities is it hitting hard the most. Now, here's where they differ sharply is on police reform. So now Harris used to be the top cop in California, but Harris supports incremental reform with federal oversight. And in contrast to Trump's law and order rhetoric that qualified immunity being airtight for police officers and law enforcement, this contrast highlights what I would like to believe a very, very crucial debate, which neither one has really, spoke about. They really have not went in depth when it comes to qualified immunity, law enforcement, etc. And this is very dangerous because excessive policing or under policing or over policing, this is going to have an effect, especially on Black communities where they already picture us as the criminal class, which is untrue. But additionally, what about economic policies? Trump's favors the trickle-down economics, as I stated before, giving tax cuts to the wealthy, the large corporations, and they will provide jobs, bonuses, etc., while Harris promotes government intervention in social spending and taxing the rich and these large corporations at a higher tax rate so they can, quote-unquote, pay their fair share, as they state all the time. But both of them have struggled to close any sort of wealth gap significantly in their respective roles. I wonder what she will say next.
To health care is a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. That's why I am in favor of and have pushed and been a leader on capping the cost of insulin at $35 a month. And why I intend to allow Medicare to actually negotiate against the big pharmaceutical companies to bring down the cost of prescription medication for everybody. That's why I have fought for what we need to do around making sure Medicare covers senior care. Access to health care should not be of the President of the United States when he says he wants to terminate the Constitution of the United States. You know what that would mean? In the Constitution of the United States is your Fourth Amendment right against unreasonable search and seizure. Your Fifth Amendment right, your Sixth Amendment right to an attorney.
Well, a lot of
Right.
rights going to be gone. The First Amendment.
But the First Amendment, the Second Amendment.
Yes.
Look, I'm in favor of the Second Amendment. I don't believe we should be taking anybody's guns away. He wants to terminate the Constitution of the United States. He is the same one, like I said earlier, who denied rent to black families, who took out that full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of those children, who birtherism accusations against the first black president. Not to mention please ask folks to Google Project 2025.
Yeah.
He would get rid of the $35 a month cap on insulin. We know how many of our seniors have.
Again, I must point out, Donald Trump is not associated with Project 2025 that was created by the Heritage Foundation, which is a right-wing think group. Okay, as far as we know, he has no ties to that, but he does have an Agenda 47. Again, either side, family, I'm apolitical. These lieticians will lie and fearmonger the American people so they can obtain the most powerful position in the world. Okay, I'm not looking at sex. I'm not looking at color. I'm not looking at race. I'm just looking at policies, because the policies is the legislations and bills that is going to indirectly and direct you and your family. They will have a direct impact on you and your family. But what these two political parties try to do is use color politics, identity politics, fear-mongering, smearing campaigns to scare you and to make you irritated, frustrated, and upset to either vote for Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. The power is in your hands of who is best for you and your family. Are you struggling trying to find a job or find high wages in order to feed and support your family? And listen, most people are just talking about room, build, and shelter. What about having enough money, making enough money so you can actually have fun, go to the amusement park, go to the fair, go to the carnival, actually travel outside of the U.S.? What are we looking at when it comes as far as the economy? What are we looking at as far as economic or environmental protections? What are we looking at police reform? All these things have a ranking system according to each American voter, according to each American citizen. If we were to put the top three things on a list, what would be your top three? Mine would be the economy. Secondly, it would be police reform. Okay, and I don't just mean police reform in a matter of let's change a couple of things. No. Let's totally revamp how policing is done in America and not have these implicit biases dealing with certain people. Okay, so again, we all have our rank list of how we'll look at the different situations in America. And again, I state that the first one for me would be the economy. I'm looking at high interest rates, inflation, food costing more, gas costing more. Everything is much more expensive. Even when you're getting work done in your house, services, all of these things are more expensive. So those things that directly impact me and my family, I would like some reduction in that. So the economy. I don't have too much contact with the police because I drive the speed limit and I have tinted windows. That doesn't break the law. So, and my car doesn't sit on 22s or 24s. Again, these are all indicators of how police target black folk, okay? Especially if you have an older car with big rims and maybe some things are not in order, or they are in order, but you live in certain neighborhoods, so they over-police certain neighborhoods, and then again, they stereotype you, and then they pull you over and probably playing drugs. Who knows? But again, that is my second one. Okay, I have yet to work on my third when it comes to healthcare. I thought about that as well for family members. Again, sometimes you are voting for yourself. Sometimes you're voting for your family. Sometimes you're just voting for whatever is most important to you. I'm going to read some of your comments here. I see Trump destroy her. She looked. This is by Trith72. Louis Noel says, I agree, Blacklogic. Your life shouldn't just be work, 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 and not be able to enjoy yourself or your family. And then Robert Estrada states that she is not qualified. Now, when it comes to qualification, do I believe that Kamala Harris can run the country? Well, she's the VP. If Joe Biden were to go down, unfortunately, during his presidency, she'll have to be the person that steps up and run the country. I believe we have enough people surrounding the presidents. I mean, of course, the president as well as the VP, that she will be able to run the president with all the advisors and all the state secretaries and head of this and head of that, okay? Now, the problem I run into, will she be able to do a good job? Now, we already saw, and here's where Trump leads her at. He's already been the president. We've already seen what he has done. We've seen the ramification, how the economy was running until COVID hit. COVID hit, listen, it was a total worldwide pandemic. You guys can make excuses for him. I can make excuses for him. But at the end of the day, the economy definitely took a turn. But before that, the economy was running. Some people would say that was a kind of a bleed over from Obama's administration. I don't know. I really don't know how long things take to really gain traction within the economy. I just don't know those things. But I'll kind of leave you guys with this. I believe that the harsh reality is that neither party offers really a comprehensive plan that fully addresses some of the systematic issues that we have in America, let alone the Black community, right? We still have a lot of things that people are not understanding that they speak totally against. Even some Black folk speak against reparations, even though, and I'm not stating this is a bad thing, Native Americans still receive reparations, but we still suffer from mass incarceration, okay? And a lot of these things has to come with the economy dealing with the wealth gap. Trump policies may appeal to those focused on business deregulation and strict immigration controls. That would be my third one. It would be the economy, police reform, and immigration. Those are my top three. But that's what his policies are mostly dealing with. But his track record, Trump's track record, shows minimum support for Black communities. Now, I know some people are like, oh, opportunity zones, he did this, he gave money to HBCUs. That has nothing to do, because Joe Biden, if you look, family, Joe Biden gave the exact same amount that Donald Trump has given to HBCUs. And quite frankly, not every Black American goes to HBCUs. Now, my son went to HBCUs, and guess what I saw at these HBCUs? I saw Black people from around the world, Caribbean, Africa, Britain. I've also seen white people and Hispanic people go to HBCUs. So if they're funding HBCUs, let me tell you, it's just not for Black people, because again, that would be unconstitutional, okay? But Harris, representing the Democrats, she champions diversity and social programs, but her vague stances on issues, because at one point in time, you guys remember that video? You guys remember that video on reparations that Kamala Harris was talking about reparations? You guys remember
Do you
that?
support reparations for Black people?
Well, listen. Again, we had.
Yeah, I don't want to bore you. I know you guys saw that plenty of times. And at the end of the video, she says, no, I will not sign any legislations into law that will solely benefit Black people. And understanding the Constitution, understanding the laws of the land, family, we cannot sign any legislation based upon race. Okay, that would be very, very discriminatory. But they can sign legislation based on lineage the exact same way they did with Native Americans. So that's very important to point out as well. But when we talk about her vague stances on issues like reparations, which leaves foundational Black Americans questioning whether the party will follow through with meaningful action, she flip-flops. You know, a couple of years ago, and she's done this with a lot of her stances. And again, I don't count that against her, because with more information, right, to be a very intelligent person, with more information should have you to change your stance if the information and evidence supports that, okay? So again, I can't really, she's flip-flop. But yeah, when it comes to reparations, you already know the history. You already know the atrocities. You know everything that occurred. And now to win over the Black vote, which we know you're not going to be for reparations, you kind of already showed your hand on that one. But ultimately, family, we as Black voters, we find ourselves in a very difficult position. Choosing between a Republican candidate whose policies may prioritize corporate interests at the expense of social equity, as well as decreasing the amount of unemployment in America, which essentially will help Black folk to receive more jobs. And without all of the DEI, affirmative action, and people are like, those are Black policies. DEI and affirmative actions are not Black policies. They're for everyone, and everyone has benefited from these policies more so than Black people. And please don't even bring in civil rights, because civil rights wasn't for Black folk either. Civil rights was pressured into signed by Lyndon B. Johnson, by the way, of Martin Luther King, but nonetheless, it helped majority of other people that were non-Black. I digress. We can have a debate on that if somebody disagrees. But we have a Democratic candidate who talks about change but offers little concrete action. The two main things that you hear Americans talking about today, family, is the economy and legal immigration. Those are the things that Donald Trump is really running on, and he is appealing to the American people, Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, and indifferent. That we see that the economy as well as illegal immigration are affecting our everyday life. Kamala Harris is not running on that. She's not running on the economy. She just said that, yeah, I had an economic plan. I have some people in Wall Street. I had some professionals to look it over, and they stated that my plan was better than Donald Trump's plan and that his plan will cause trillions of dollars in debt. That's all she said. No one can see the plan. No one saw her plan. And no one saw Donald Trump's plan either. But again, Donald Trump has an extra spade in his hand because he's already been president and people have already seen the things that he have done that has benefited them, okay? So you can call that the Trump card, I guess. But nonetheless, when we think about the Democrats and we think about, I guess, people like to demonize being liberal, which, again, is whatever, how you see things, but they supported transgender sex changes for prisoners. They have allowed transgenders, and this is not against transgenders in any way. You choose what you want to be in life, but making our kids susceptible to behavior that their minds can yet comprehend, if that makes any sense. Because at the end of the day, neither platform has yet proposed comprehensive legislation that directly, tackles a lot of the systematic inequalities that we have. So, I mean, as we are navigating the political landscape, you must do this with much skepticism, in my opinion. And we have to really seek accountability beyond these so-called campaign promises and a lot of this empty rhetoric for both of them. And for people who are voting, no matter who the candidate may be, you have yet to make up your mind. You're one of those swing voters. The challenge is not just picking the lesser of two evils. That's not the challenge. The challenge is not picking the lesser of two evils, but it's also pushing for systematic reforms. whether within these parties or outside of them. And especially for foundational Black Americans, we have to look at this, whether these parties outside of them, that they prioritize Black empowerment and protection. That is what we should really be looking at. Now, let me read some more of your comments here. We see AP. Trump will go on Shannon's show, but Kamala wouldn't go on Rogan's. I believe that. Trump is very open. Again, I don't know the strategies in his political party. We understand that Trump is not as scripted as Kamala Harris, so that may make Trump a little more appealing to the American people instead of having a institutionalized 10, 20, 3 decades of a politician. Robert Estrada said Kamala couldn't handle 3 hours of question. I hate to say this, but I agree because again, I'm on neither side. I'm apolitical with this family. Please put your comments. We're going to listen to more of Kamala Harris. I want to see what you guys think.
I'll give you another example of why Donald Trump has not earned the support of folks to be president of the United States again. When he was president the last time, during the height of COVID, 1 in 3 Black Americans knew somebody who died from COVID. You remember those days?
I do.
And people couldn't get their hands on a COVID test? At that very same time, Donald Trump as president secretly sent COVID tests to the president of Russia for his personal use. While Americans were dying every day, he has not earned the right to be president of the United States. It's one thing if he has a television show that's very popular. He can put his name on a building. Even though we all know he was not a terribly good businessman, which is why he filed for bankruptcy 6 times. But that is one thing. To be president of the United States means to try and find common ground, to build consensus, to lift up the American people instead of trying to beat people down all the time. It means solving problems, which means you have to be able to get out of your own head and scan to be concerned about the well-being of other people and then do something about it. Does anyone think Donald Trump thinks that way?
Yeah, well, empathy requires you to divorce your own ego to see yourself as someone else.
That's exactly right. And we know that's not his character. So it's about, is this the right person for that job, right?
He said immigrants are taking Black jobs. I don't know what those Black jobs that they're taking. Can you elaborate on that? What the immigrants are taking? What Black jobs are they?
It's just another example of him trying to divide and him trying to scare people. It's just another example of him doing that.
I want to be very clear with this. Initially, when I first heard Donald Trump stated that illegal immigrants were taking Black jobs, I did take a step back, but I had to rationalize it. I had to really think about what he meant or what I thought he meant. Now, on first second, what he means by Black jobs? Like, are they just targeting Black people in their jobs and they're undercutting manufacturing, distribution, low-skilled labor, blue-collar work? What is it? Factories? Would it be creating vehicles? I had to really think about what he meant by Black jobs. So I had to intellectualize it. I stated that there is a concentration of Black people and certain labor markets more so than any other groups of people. So when we look at the difference between when Donald Trump was in office and when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris is in office, how a lot of those industries and sectors of business were concentrated by Black people, majority of Black people doing those jobs, over the course of these 3, almost 4 years now, has a very, very large decrease in Black employment, but a high increase of Black unemployment. So if they're laying off Black people left and right, who are replacing Black folk in these jobs? That's the question I had. And instead of me leading the horse to water, family, again, if you're still on the fence about who you're going to vote for, I would advise you to do what I did and do the research to see the claim that he made, was it about discrimination? Was it about creating a divide? Or was he just telling the truth far as if someone to state that Asian Americans are mostly in tech jobs and computer programming jobs, would anyone argue about that? I don't think so. Would they state, and these are stereotypical, I know that, but I'm gonna say it anyway, because we associate Silicon Valley in California with majority of Asians, right? And you can go ahead and do your research into that as well. So when we look at the different labor markets and sectors and industries of business, you will see certain demographics lean in one way or another. That's like not social studies, when you're like a therapist, social workers. A lot of social workers are middle skilled, low end, depending on your neighborhood, whether it be certain parts of Texas, DC, especially on the Eastern Seaboard, a majority ran by Black women, okay? Especially governmental jobs in DC. There are a lot of Black people in governmental jobs in DC. So when we look at the different labor markets, I had to take another step back and say, maybe that wasn't as racial as I thought, but I simply don't know.
Of him trying to say it's either you or them, right? And the other thing is that it's incredibly demeaning because, and he still has not been forced to define, Donald Trump, what do you define as a Black job? Because let me tell you what I define as a Black job. Vice President of the United States.
That's a good one.
Right?
It is.
Come
I don't know about.
I won't go there. Never mind.
To pay, but it's a good job to have. That'll be.
Well, you know, not everybody is Shannon Sharpe.
No, but you know what I wanted to ask? You've been in basically your adult life. You've been a public servant.
Yes.
Negative. I tell people, go negative. You know, let my friends make the money.
Well,
it's
just
so crooked. The press
it
is so crooked.
It's crooked, but it's also they're diminishing themselves. They're killing all their credibility, and it's opening up the credibility to new media. It's opening up the credibility to independent media. All these.
The worst I've ever seen, though, and I've seen the worst. I mean, I've been a part of it. I've seen the worst. Kamala goes on 60 Minutes, gave an answer that a child wouldn't give. It was so bad. And 60 Minutes took the answer out. They took the whole, and they put another answer in.
They edited it deceptively.
Which didn't make sense either, but it was better. They took it wasn't editing. It was fraud. This was not editing. You know, editing is where I'll give an answer and they'll take a couple of words and change them around, or they might even take a sentence or two off, which is very bad. But it's sort of bad. You know, I'd give an answer which was a very good answer. I always talk about, you know, I like to give long the weave. You know, I like to.
You like to weave things in.
But when you do the weaves, and you have to be very smart to do weaves. When you do the weave, look at this. Just in this one thing, we're talking about little pieces all over here, but it always ends up.
Home.
No, it comes back home. For the right people. For the wrong people, it doesn't come back home, and they end up in the wilderness, right? but they can take my answer, and you know what? They may take a little piece of it out or something, and they use the term, "Yes, we wanted to save time." Well, it's not. But I've never heard. I think it's the biggest scandal in broadcast history, what happened to CBS. So you have CBS 60 Minutes. That's a news program. It's not an entertainment program. It's under their news. It's the head of their news thing. She gives an answer that shows that she's essentially incompetent. And they took the answer. Could you imagine them doing that for me?
We can show it if you want people to see it. Can we show it? No?
Sure.
We get in trouble? We'll get copyright strike? Okay.
Listen,
anyone can find it.
You.
But it's drastic. But what was interesting was the other full version was available initially. It was like a preview.
Somebody made a big mistake.
Somebody put that preview out there.
Some kid put the preview out.
Exactly.
And then the bosses did this or that. And then all of a sudden they said, we got a problem.
Exactly. And then
they got caught by mistake.
Well,
but don't you think that's a big, to me, and don't forget, this is election interference and fraud. And it's 60 Minutes. It's their news division. So it's a
big deal.
They give those licenses out, Joe, for free. They should pay a fortune. They're worth a fortune. They give them out for free because they're using the public airwaves.
Yes, I have.
You've been AG.
My whole adult life.
You've been a DA. Yeah. You've been a senator. You've been VP. Is that what you envisioned? Is that what you always wanted to be, was a public servant?
I've always wanted to serve. You know, was raised. I mean,
I know you guys are really getting tired of the lies. I mean, on both accounts. I mean, both of them are characters, and I know some of you may sway one way or another. I think Robert Estrada, I think he has missed his calling. You should definitely be a virtual comedian. He stated the only thing she found in the White House is the liquor cabinet. Then he came back because, Trump used a lot of hand motions. Trump's hand is like playing with a slinky. I thought that was hilarious. But when we look at, essentially, again, going over the Donald Trump on Joe Rogan, we have to understand how Donald Trump still discussed these various topics, including, again, the economy, crime rates, immigration, and pre-pandemic, he also went over how, the tax cuts under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, which Trump's claimed benefited many American families, including black communities as well. He also stated that his policies led to historically low unemployment rates for black Americans, which is true, pointing to statistics. Now, somebody may go back in the 60s or 70s and may find some comparing statistics. But nonetheless, from the early 2020s, it showed that black unemployment at a record low of 5.8%. But we understand how Donald Trump has faced criticism regarding his response to police violence and the qualified airtight immunity that he's willing to give in conjunction with the systematic racism that a lot of our people go through. And Trump has downplayed issues like racial injustice. He has, insisting he's done more for the black community than any president since Lincoln. And me being a critic of both candidates, I argue that he has failed to address systematic issues at their core. His stance is very low on law and order, and also just a punitive approach that some believers do not support the community development initiatives. Now, when we talk about your Kamala girl, okay, and kind of going to a brief overview, she's highlighted how the Biden-Harris administration has been committed to racial equity. I don't know how. She also discussed significant pieces of legislation like the American Rescue Plan, which essentially allocated billions to support small businesses, many of which are supposedly owned by black entrepreneurs. Furthermore, she addressed initiatives aimed at dismantling systematic barriers such as criminal justice reform and access to quality education. And I know you guys seen the whole, was it $1 million to 20,000 black men or something like that. $20,000 can be remitted or accepted to a point where they don't have to pay it back. They're doing all of these parlor tricks, family, in order to gain the black vote, in order to win over the American people for you to vote for them. But again, taking their two stances, you're talking about the Vice President of the United States of America and a former president, which is one term away, of the President of the United States of America. And you have to look at both of their track record of what they have already done. Not on what they're already do, because Kamala Harris has been caught many a times stating that the only difference between, and I'm paraphrasing, difference between her and Joe Biden is Joe Biden and I'm Kamala Harris. Meaning that we may see, allegedly, we may see the same 4 years of illegal immigration. Even when I saw the interview on the Black Authorities channel with Jill Stein, she was for open door policies as well. Because, Kamala Harris, she may acknowledge the ongoing challenges. She does this a lot. She definitely acknowledges the ongoing challenges that's faced by black Americans, right? Notably, mostly in healthcare disparities, highlighted, as you stated, what she was stating before about COVID-19. But her administration has focused on diversifying the workforce and providing opportunities through Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which supposedly aims to improve public transportation, something that disproportionately affects mostly of the low-income neighborhoods. But again, how is all of this going to work? And it's really not about securing the border, right? But we have an immigration problem, and no one is hiding the fact that it is a problem. But the one thing that I'm not getting from Kamala Harris when it comes to immigration is to really instill a system that is going to limit, slow down, because we would never stop illegal immigrants from coming over. They will have to build a wall, 100 feet down, 100 feet high, with electrical currents running through it, barbed wires. It will probably be $50 trillion to build the wall that some people are talking about in order to really stop illegal immigrants from coming over and have them to come over through legal means. Through legal means. That's what we're referring to, through legal means. I wonder what you guys think. So with that being said, I'm going to open up the phone lines, family. I want to know what you guys are saying. I'm going to put the invite code up here. Whether you agree or disagree with the commentary, you agree or disagree with either candidate, you have any comments, please let me know. I'll have you guys in the back channel, okay? But as we wait for people to get into the back channel, I'm going to let you hear a little bit more of Kamala Harris.
Back to whether however you are raised, in the community in which you are raised, including the church in which you are raised, I have always believed that it is an important pursuit to figure out how you can serve. And we can do it in different ways, right? I chose public service. You chose a different route, but it's about service. And I've only had one client my entire life, the people. And the reason I keep doing it is because I know the difference that I and we can make when we believe in what is possible and then work hard at it. And my pledge in this campaign to everyone, regardless of who you are, where you live, what you look like, I will be a president for all Americans. And I will work to bring our country back together because frankly,
Cable, you don't have that. Cable, billions of dollars, they give them out free, but you have to be honest and all. That was bad. I think that David Muir and that woman that was aside, I never even heard of her, but they kept interrupting me. It was like, I said, how many people am I debating here? I got this one and I got you two. But he went after me 11 different times. It's interesting. I always thought he was a nice guy, but he's just like the rest of them,
Well, that's his job, unfortunately, and I'm sure
but not when they're
what they
wrong.
want. You're right. Well, the problem was they fact-checked you and they didn't fact-check her. And
Not
one of
at
the most
all.
egregious examples of that was when she said that there are no troops right now deployed in war zones.
Yeah.
There's a very famous viral video that went online of troops in a war zone saying, well, what the fuck are we then? Because there's thousands of them. Dan Crenshaw, the congressman, posted on his Instagram all of the various examples of troops that are deployed, thousands and thousands of troops that are currently deployed.
Stupidly deployed.
But the point is, if this is going to be an actual real debate and not a propaganda exercise, if it's going to be a real debate, you have to fact check everybody. Like if someone says maybe she thought there was no, which is also a problem. So it's one of two things. It's either it was not true, it was a lie on purpose, which is terrible, or it was the opposite. It was ignorance, which is also terrible.
Well, Joe, when I said crime is soaring, he said, no, crime has gone down. I said, where did you hear that one? Crime has gone down. I mean, I'm debating with this guy, but I've had that.
Well, there was amended FBI statistics that came out after that showed that crime had gone up substantially.
And by the way, the statistics were a fraud. Because when they put out the statistics, they didn't include some of the worst places. They didn't include some of the worst cities, some of the most deadly places. But when the real numbers came out, I turned out to be right. But
you turned out to be right, but then there's another problem. Unreported crime is way up. Because people have lost, look, the morale that the police department has in a lot of these cities where they've done this defund the police bullshit, the morale of these poor cops, it's fucking horrible.
All right. That was the end of the clip. That was just a small clip about the media, but it had a lot of nuggets inside of that, family, that I want you guys to hear. I see nobody has any comments of what I'm saying. I try to stay very neutral with my rhetoric. I'm very apolitical on both candidates. I tend not to take sides. I just take the black side, if you get my drift. Ira Murphy, can you imagine Kamala sitting across from Putin? Yeah, I can imagine that. See, again, we're trying to make this a battle of the minds. I don't think either candidate is fit to be president. Now, one may do a better job than the other, and we do have their track records. We have Kamala Harris' track record, and the only thing we really have to go off her is being the border czar, and she has done a very terrible job being the border czar and protecting America. So a lot of people are going to look down on that, but she said a lot of things that certain demographics of people, especially women, are going to take into account. We're trying to implement and reverse the eradication of Roe versus Wade. So as they would state, women can have autonomy of their bodies. They can have power over their bodies. Okay. And here's the thing about that. I thought about this, and correct me if I'm wrong, ladies, if you're inside the room. You have control over your bodies. The law, okay, the law has prevented businesses to establishing the deletion of your babies, the deletion of your fetuses and embryos. Okay. Now, I get it. In some states, especially with a lot of things that were implemented by the reversal of Roe versus Wade, and that the decision if the state is going to implement the abortion laws, that is left up to the states. Now, a lot of people like to, pin that on Donald Trump. Donald Trump passed it where now the states have the power if they're going to allow abortions or not. So again, you still have, power and control over your bodies. You just have to go to a particular state to get that procedure done. But essentially, it's the prevention of establishments, okay, of creating businesses to perform that procedure. Now, I know there are some misdemeanors and felonies if people would do it out of a medical facility, that women, people who carry these fetuses and embryos and babies, does this to themselves, that there could be some lawful actions that occur after. But again, I'm not too familiar with the particulars on the law, but that's why I'm asking for a little bit of assistance on that. So when we compare these two candidates, family, I just want to know, what are your thoughts? And I want you to take out race. I want you to take out sex. I want you to take out gender. I just want you to judge them on their proposed verbal policies, because I have yet to see anything in black and white. But from what they're stating, from the economy to social justice, police reform, environmental protections, everything that they have come up with these talking points about, what are your thoughts and which candidate best suits your needs? Let's do this. If you believe you're going to vote for Donald Trump, put a 1 in the chat. If you believe that you're going to vote for Kamala Harris, put a 2 in the chat. If you're going to be on the couch with me, put a 3 in the chat. I'll give you guys some time.
Frankly, I think people are exhausted with the anger, with the hate, with the division, the attempt to have Americans pointing their fingers at each other. I think people are exhausted. It's not healthy for the productivity of our country. Like, do we want to strive? Do we want to thrive? Or do we want to spend full time with vengeance, demeaning other people? And living a life of service is about, I think, the importance of lifting people up, not tearing them down.
My team here at Shay Media is always growing and making moves. And they say they're going to do this. They're not pandering. They're telling you, laying out their elaborate plan on what they're going to do. But it seems to you, when you promise it, if I'm president, this is what I'm going to do in the first 90 days. This is what I'm going to do. My administration's going to do while I'm in office. You're pandering. How do you get through to those that says, look, this is what I'm going to do. If I'm elected president, these are the policies, and they will lead to meaningful and impactful change?
I see a lot of people voting for Donald Trump. Again, family, we're just doing a quick tally of who you guys may be voting for, okay? I'm apolitical on this. 1 is for Donald Trump. If you're voting for Donald Trump, put a 1 in the chat. If you're voting for Kamala Harris, put a 2 in the chat. If you're going to be on the couch with me, put a 3 in the chat.
Well, part of it is just to be candid. I think that there's sadly a misinformation out there about who I am and what I've done, because if people are informed about fact, they will know that almost everything that I'm talking about doing as president is built on a foundation of work that I've been doing for years. If it is about economic empowerment of the Black community and all communities, I've been working on that. As vice president, I am responsible for billions of dollars from big banks and big corporations.
Okay, family, I'm looking at the chat and I'm seeing Donald Trump and I'm seeing the couch. I have yet to see a 2 for Kamala Harris. You mean to tell me Black, white, Hispanic, Asian folk alike, there's no one in the chat that is voting for Kamala Harris? Someone's trolling. Come on now. Come on now. You should not get promoted for doing a terrible job. I definitely agree on that. Robert T. states, I sat out the last election where we ended up with Biden. Okay. Kamala Harris, no plan, Orange Man bad. Vote for me. Let's see. Trump did more for Black people than she did. Both had 4 years. Bad job at the border. Okay, so if you're voting for Donald Trump, put a 1 in the chat. If you're voting for Kamala Harris, put a 2 in the chat. If you're on the couch for this election, put a 3 in the chat. I see mostly 1s, family. I don't see any 2s, and I see a couple of 3s. Are you guys trolling me here? There's no one in the chat. There's no one listening to me that is voting for Kamala Harris. There's no one from the Ski-Wee crowd, the AKAs. There's no Kappas. There's no Omegas. There's no Alphas. We're the Deltas. Where are all the sorors and fraternities? Where are the Divine 9 people at that's voting for Kamala Harris? Come on now. Help me out.
Corporations, including technology companies, getting into community banks to increase access to capital for minority-owned and other small businesses. If you look at my work over a period of years, my focus again on something like maternal mortality is longstanding, which directly impacts Black men and Black women.
Right.
And the Black family. If you look at the work that I am doing that is about small.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry, family. That was the last lie that I could let her tell. Again, I believe both candidates are litigation. One lies more than the other. I'll leave that to myself. We do have a track record of her for these last 4 years, as well as Donald Trump. And that's all we really have to go off of, really. Because, again, we can pull in their past, her past in California, her past in locking up, Black men and Black women for truancy, as well as nonviolent drug offenses. We can look at Donald Trump. He has a Starkey past with some discrimination accounts. Him taking a strong stance on the Central Park 5. So again, we can compare apples to apples with both candidates when it comes to their public speaking abilities. Lord have mercy. Trump, you don't know what you're going to get. Kamala, she's going to speak in word salads and rambles and laugh hysterically crazy. She's going to say things that are unhinged. I did a whole thing with Kamala where I just had her laughing and she was just saying things that the interviewers and the anchor people were like looking at her like she was just this batshit crazy. Excuse my language, but yeah, just totally crazy. But if anything, I want to remind everybody, not that, again, I told you guys where I was. I see mostly 1s in the chat. Not one single person has voting for Kamala Harris, but I will help you guys into taking a second look at Kamala Harris for the President of the United States for your vote. Okay, this is not me campaigning for her, but I have one video clip that I believe will sway you guys one way or another.
Do you support reparations for Black people?
Well, listen. Again, we had over 200 years of slavery. We had Jim Crow for almost a century. We had legalize discrimination, and now we have segregation and discrimination that is not legal still exists and is a barrier to progress. We have disparities around housing, we have disparities around education, we have disparities around income. And we have to recognize that everybody did not start out on an equal footing in this country. And in particular, black people have not. And so we have got to recognize that and do something and give folks a lift up. That's why, for example, I'm proposing the Lift Act. Give people who are making $100,000 less as a family a tax credit, which will benefit and uplift 60% of black families who are in poverty.
So by default, it affects black families, but there's not a particular policy for African Americans that you explore.
But no, if you look at the reality of who will benefit from certain policies, when you take into account that they're not starting at the same place and they're not starting on equal footing, it will directly benefit black children, black families, black homeowners, because the disparities are so significant. So if we focus on the specific issues that have resulted in the greatest disparities, and we understand that that's part of why we're doing it. Listen, the reality also is this. Any policy that will benefit black people will benefit all of society. Let's be clear about that. Let's really be clear about that. So I'm not going to sit here and say, I'm going to do something that's only going to benefit black people. No, because whatever benefits that black family will benefit that community and society as a whole and the country. Right?
Sorry for the feedback there, family. I had that video loaded. I don't know why I was giving you some guys some echo, so I do apologize for the audio quality. But yeah, she's not going to do anything specifically for black folk. But again, under the Biden-Harris administration, they passed legislation to give Asian Americans a federal hate crime bill. They have given Native Americans billions of dollars more so than what they are allotted by Congress. Through executive orders and other legislations, which I'm not hating on, but nonetheless, again, they won't do anything specifically for black folk. Even when Obama was in office, he gave millions of dollars to Holocaust survivors, and we know that the Holocaust survivors were Jewish folk. And again, I was looking at the Ben Shapiro 25 versus 1 versus 25 liberals or something like that. And someone was calling him out, saying that he was a white man. And he said, well, some people are white that are Jewish and there's another ethnic. He couldn't name what ethnic he is. Now, first and foremost, and this is my take on religion. Religion is not a race nor an ethnic, it's a belief system. Now, somehow we have associated Jewish people of being white, even though there are black Jewish people as well. So we can't just say Jewish is an ethnic. So Jewish is definitely religion, and this is my opinion. But I digress on that. But nonetheless, family, there you have it for today. Thank you all for joining me. If you're new to Blacklogic, please hit that subscribe button. And if you like what you heard, if you didn't like what you heard, hit the appropriate thumbs up or thumbs down button. But nonetheless, give this video a like in some degree. And subscribe to the channel so you can hear and listen to more commentary when it comes to politics and black empowerment as well. You guys have a great and wonderful day. I thank you all for joining me here. Let's see what else. Oh, okay. You're good. Thank you, guys. Robert T., Stuart C., Robert Estrada, Lois Knowles, Crystal Watson. I'm just giving you guys a couple of shout outs here. I see Chip is in the room. Michael, School of Manifestation. Volvo, I see you, Volvo. Who else we have in the room? I'm going back up here. Young Tarun. I don't know how to say it. I'm horrible. We the People Network. Thank you all for joining me here this afternoon. And again, subscribe to the channel. You guys have a great and wonderful day. Be one.